we'll go to Colin, who has a follow-up question.
Hi, Yukai. Last week, we talked about different feedback vehicles and figuring out how to get people to engage in desired actions when you don't have like an individualized connection to them. So I was thinking about trying to get some shop floor associates who don't have computer access to start taking advantage of some of the learning opportunities that we have in our organization. One thing that I've been thinking about is how to try to build CD3 in when you can't do personalized messaging. How can, like, if I was going to be putting a poster up on a cafeteria wall talking about different opportunities, what are some ways that I can try to work some CD3 into that so people really feel like they've got some interaction, some opportunity to customize all of those types of things?
A few things. Number one is I'm remembering the things we talked about. One potential thing you can think about from a feedback mechanics trigger standpoint is, if there's no digital environment, is also attire. If you can print out, like, if people who've been through this program, they print out really, really cool shirts or whatever. I don't know if people need uniforms, but then they have this special shirt, right, that says I did it or I'm a whatever. Then they go around, people say, hey, like, what is that? I saw like 2 other coworkers wearing this. And I was like, hey, it's because I did this training system and we finished. It's really cool. And so that's another way to again, when we don't have much feedback mechanics, we're kind of like, especially feedback vehicles, we're kind of like trying to grab us whatever we can, right? So back to the CD3. CD3 is hard in general, right? Because we talked about in the Octalysis framework, CD3 is the right top. We talk golden right top corner. It's white hat, it's intrinsic. Everyone's like, yay, that means it's the best. And it's, I call it everlasting engagement, and every timeless game in the market has core drive 3. So technically it should be the best thing ever, and everyone should just do CD3, right? Now, unfortunately, every single one of the 8 core drives have pros and cons. Core drive 3's con is that it's the hardest to implement by far, because you are giving people creativity, right? You're giving people meaningful choice. So by default, you're not building something linear. And so you need to have a platform system for people to be more creative, to do things, to explore and try lots of different combos, right? So that's number one. And number two, people usually think they're too busy for CD3. CD3 means you actually jump in and you engage in it. It's like, oh, I don't want to solve a puzzle game, I'm kind of busy. But if say, hey, do you want to, do this and you can get a free iPad? So, oh yeah, free iPad, cool. So extrinsic is easier to pull people in. Now, given that, when we think about CD3, we think about small scale CD3, like giving them a small sense of meaningful choices. So for instance, when I wrote my book, I wanted to give people some CD3. So for instance, at the end of every chapter, I say, hey, there's 2 or 3 challenges, right? Three challenges. And there's a scarce that said, hey, just choose one. Of course, if they want to do all 3, that makes me happy. But if I tell them to do all 3, then it's overwhelming. They don't know nothing. So it's like, hey, choose one. And then I'll even label like easy, medium, hard. And what's interesting is at the beginning of the first few chapters, it's like, maybe I think like easy only, and then easy, medium. And then only after like middle in the book, you get easy, medium, hard. And so it almost like feels like hard is what you unlock. So you do feel a little bit of meaningful choice. Like you get to choose the difficulty of the desired action you want to do. Do you want to just have a thought exercise? Like, hey, think about this, cool. Or if you want to just actually figure something out, or actually design something that's more that has a bit more meat in it. And so another thing about CD3 that's the lightweight is to let them envision things in their own heads. So you don't tell them to do something, you tell them to imagine itself. So we talked about when people are doing marketing for lottery systems, they will say, imagine what you can do if you won $100 million, right? They don't say, hey, now you're rich, they do too. So depending on what quarter they want to play on. But instead of just saying, hey, you can buy a lot of things if you have $100 million. Say, hey, imagine what you can. So when people then imagine their heads, it's a bit of CD3, and they're going to imagine their best possible scenario, right? And we do know also, psychologically speaking, if people have imagined their heads, they somehow believe the probability of it happening is increased. So that really helps the lottery, because now it's like, hey, I could really, there's a higher chance I can win this because it feels real. I've imagined in my head. So if you can kind of imprint, let's say, like imagine what you can accomplish if you knew how to resolve all passive aggressiveness in your workplace, right? Because I know a lot of people struggle with passive aggressiveness, either with people around or they don't even know how to be sincerely direct. So, or imagine if you knew how to communicate to your boss how to negotiate a higher salary or whatever, right? So it's like you let them imagine that, and that's a little bit of CD3 with the limited scope we have. Then there's the small game design technique, which is the blank fill too, and it does a little bit of CD3 in the sense that you don't just let them skim it or look at it. You actually, you can have a blank fill, and it's people have to think about what could be there in the blank space. And I don't know if you've seen a YouTube channel called Charisma in Command or something, or it's a YouTube channel that talks about like how a lot of people persuade people, how to tell jokes that are actually funny or don't say things that are awkward. And they do this practice. I should have put it in my blank fill video, but when I was making the video, I didn't think about this example. So at the beginning, they'll say like, all right, this is what we'll go over. Tip number, and it'll show like, never do blank. When people question your integrity, do blank, right? And then it's like, oh, okay, there's a bit of blank fill, there's a bit of CD7, people might guess it. And as they start going through the content, it gets filled up. So again, where I will say the challenge you're dealing with is hard when you lack feedback vehicles, everything is very hard. So all I'm trying to do is give you some ideas here and there that could be applied. Again, there is no full CD3 where they're just interacting with that limited bulletin board, let's say, and then just trying to strategize, figuring it out for hours and hours. I think at least that would be very hard, depending on how much they can do with it.
Yeah, so with that blank fill idea, it sounds like almost a BuzzFeed type of promotion. Take this class and learn 10 ways to do XYZ. You'll never believe number 7. Like that's the type of thing that we're trying to do.
So that is more of a CD7, like just like people hate that as a clickbait, right? It's like so the point is not to say like, oh, you'll never believe what happens next, right? That CD7, that could happen. You could definitely try to do that, right? That works. But keep in mind, CD7 works with short bursts of activity. So if you want to do so they're like, oh, click here, and you find out what happens, and they'll click it. But it's like, hey, show up to the town hall tomorrow in downtown, and you'll never believe what happens next, right? And it's like, oh, I don't know what's going to happen next, but I'm not going to find out, right? So that kind of CD7 is for short bursts of activities, small commitments, not drawn out commitments. That's a big theme for CD7 in general, because you don't know if you're going to win or not. If you don't know if the surprise is worth it or not, which means you don't want to do large commitments to find out. But the blank fill actually is more about core drive 2, development accomplished. It's CD3 leading to core drive 2. And it's interesting because CD2 is the opposite of CD7, right? It's in the different corners. And so one is that because you know what's going to happen next, you kind of it's kind of engaging your brain a lot. The other one is because you know fully what's going on, you feel smart about it. So the thing with the blank fills is that the blank fills oftentimes should feel relatively easy also. So there's 2 types, I guess. There's the CD7 blank fill and CD2 blank fill, but a lot of the blank fills is like, kill 2 blanks with 1 stone. Like I'm sure most of you immediately know what the blank is, right? But if I just say it, it's like, okay, but now your brain engaged a little bit. You had to semi-guess it, but you quickly got to it, and therefore you feel smart. So CD2. So a lot of the blank fill designs is that people immediately could figure it out and they feel smart, but they had to engage their brain a little bit. So, but then there are ones like the one that I said, Charisma on Command. I think that one is a bit harder to guess. So that is a bit more CD7, but maybe not so. So you're using language that's like, oh, like the whole world changed because of this one blank. So yeah. So exaggeration gets people to try it the first time, but afterwards, it is the boy who cried wolf, right? After a while, you lose credibility and people stop listening to you, even when it's really that good.